members of Parliament are at loggerheads over some of the candidates recommended for the SABC board. It has also emerged that MPs clashed on the possible removal of former head of SABC News, Phathiswa Magopeni. We're now joined by William Bird, Media Monitoring Africa, and we understand that the President sent back the list of 15 candidates, wanting it to be 12, and saying, okay, what needs to be done. So, William, thank you very much for your time. You believe the President is being disingenuous in this entire process. Why?
Good afternoon. Well, for the simple reason that the President, in terms of the Broadcasting Act, the wording's quite clear. It says the President must, on the advice of the National Assembly, appoint the board. Now, on the 20th of December in 2022, the Portfolio Committee in Parliament sent through to the President the list of 12 names. Now, what Parliament's messed up in doing, and clearly so, is that they added what they're calling a reserve list or a reserve pool of 3 additional names. Now, what the President is arguing is that because that was an illegal act by Parliament to add another 3 names, which isn't catered for in the law, he's then unsure about which 12 he has to appoint. Now, for us, this is clearly not the case, and that the President must simply appoint the 12. So we have gone to the Constitutional Court to ask them to compel the President to appoint the 12 names. What you're seeing now in Parliament, where they are now attempting to adjust or amend that list of 12, is simply and utterly crazy. It's something that shows this is what happens in a leadership vacuum. Because we haven't had a board for over 5 months now, you're now getting people in Parliament thinking that they can amend their process and amend a public process. The simple reality is the list of 12 names were chosen, all the parties participated, there was public participation, the President must appoint them. It's that simple.
I mean, reports are abound that the former Communications Minister is also meddling in this entire process, in particular asking of the inclusion of the former SABC's head of news, Phathiswa Magopeni.
Yeah, I mean, that's a separate issue to whether the President should appoint, but certainly it seems abundantly clear that the former Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies clearly sought to interfere in the affairs and business of Parliament. It's astonishing that she hasn't been sanctioned, and in fact she needs to be called to order by Parliament for that. So bearing in mind that Parliament, as I said, sent through the list of names on the 20th of December, towards the end of January, so months after the process had been completed, then the Minister seeks to write to them and demand that they review the list. I mean, it's astonishing that she could act with such arrogance to suggest to Parliament that they can then somehow amend the list. The reality is that if they had a problem, if anyone had a problem with them, there was an opportunity to raise that with Parliament. The questions could be put to the candidates and they could be addressed. If Parliament has erred, which some believe they may have on some of the candidates, then they must wait for them to be appointed and then they can take that appointment on formal legal review. But you can't have a scenario where your Minister of Communication thinks that it's okay for her to write to Parliament and raise questions after the process has been completed. And what makes it even more astonishing and offensive is that we would not have known about that had it not been for us trying to compel the President to appoint the board.
The purported ambiguity on the part of the President or confusion, you also suggest, or rather you believe there were other options, right? If he genuinely had a concern, he could have taken this matter to the courts for clarity if he needed it.
You know, the reality is this. There were 12 names. The list of 12 was clear. He needed to appoint them. The law does not give him the discretion to think about it, to question Parliament. There was nothing to suggest that that process was unfair, illegal, or anything like that. The fact that the 3 were there, in our view, makes no difference to the simple reality that the President needs to appoint them. It's really not a difficult, and what is occurring now is trying to, throw a lot of and make a lot of dust and noise in order to make it seem as though government's guilty of anything but doing their job. And frankly, they need to just do their job, and we wouldn't be in this mess. Bearing in mind again that this is a completely engineered crisis. If Parliament had done their job in June last year and had run the process before the last board had finished their term, we wouldn't be in this crisis. Now we're 5 months without a board, and you can bet that SABC is going to be in the most profound crisis when they finally get a board. And who will be to blame for that? The blame must lie exclusively at the door of Parliament and at the President.
William Bird, Media Monitoring Africa, always with Media Monitoring Africa. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon.